Welcome to Hekman Research 101, where you can start learning the practices of a wise scholar along with your Hekman Research librarians. Today we're talking about evaluation specifically for academic research. In our other videos, we unpacked why we judge, assess, evaluate information, and why the context we're evaluating for matters. So what exactly does academic type evaluation look like? It's all about academic researchers with scholarly priorities. Academic researchers are people like your college professors, or you when you're working on a project for a class, who must evaluate data and information sources as they compile evidence for their own experiments and arguments. When researchers publish their works in scholarly journals, they are often required to include detailed explanations of how they went through their evaluations because they will be peer-reviewed. All their scholarly work has to hold up under scrutiny, including what sources of information they're using and how they're using them. So what kind of sources are most useful to scholarly work? Usually, scholarly ones. Remember, scholarly sources are written by and for scholars, with scholarly values in mind. Values like objectivity, transparency, and educational purpose. You can see this in how a journal article is crafted. Journal articles clearly denote who their authors are and their qualifications. They want to be clear that the source of this research is knowledgeable and trustworthy. You'll also notice something about the content of journal articles. They usually supply lots of in-depth evidence or data to support their findings, and they're usually very careful to point out what they didn't cover in their study, their limitations, or opposing viewpoints. The vocab in a journal article is often very factual and technical because they're written for a scholarly audience, with the goal of carrying on an educational conversation rather than trying to persuade or provoke or entertain. In comparison, you can tell just by looking at popular sources like online news posts that they have different priorities and values. For example, you often see obvious branding in news posts because clicks and profits are an important part of their operation. You might also notice that they are shorter reads with more approachable language and catchy visuals because they're written for a popular audience. Online news also gets published very quickly, again, because that's what the readers want, and like other popular sources, their priority is to give readers what they want so they can get read. Now, not every source or piece of information falls into an obvious category, so scholars must take time to evaluate to select ones that are appropriate for their academic context. One aspect of evaluation is particularly important in academic work: expertise. In our Understanding Evaluation lesson, we talked about evaluating sources on 3 scales: relevance, expertise, and bias. They are all important factors, but what's special about expertise here? Again, it has to do with scholarly priorities and academic culture. Expertise, or authority, is conferred on scholars whose many years of study and training have earned them credibility in the field. So research that is built on expert sources is considered more credible. Degrees and affiliations can sometimes act as expertise shorthand among scholars. We assume that degreed authors or well-known educational publishers are more qualified and therefore more credible. References and works cited are also markers of expertise because they provide evidence or proof that the claims made in this research are built on original insight and on the work of other scholars as well. In the academic context, consensus among experts adds credibility. This also explains why scholars care so much about peer review, too. However, for all this talk about expertise, we must understand that no source is perfect, and mistakes and oversights can still happen in scholarly publications. After all, even expert scholars are human beings, both imperfect and open to many influences and values. So how do we evaluate academic sources for expertise or authority? First, as we mentioned, there's the shorthand. Look at the author. Do they have any qualifications? Are they affiliated with any groups or organizations? Look also at the publisher. Are they well known in the field? Where do they get their funding? Additionally, you can easily look for references and peer review. Most scholarly databases actually have filters that let you search for peer-reviewed journals. But that's a rather surface-level checklist. To really dig deep in our evaluations, we should also ask more complex questions like, is the reputation of this author or publisher still reliable? You may have to look for when this article was published versus current news about the source. You may also ask, is this article honest about its shortcomings or gaps? You can assess that by looking for a limitations section or whether they acknowledge opposing viewpoints. In the end, academic type evaluation is just a matter of looking out for sources with scholarly priorities. When in doubt, The library has the resources and skills to help you evaluate your sources. You can chat with a librarian about evaluation or schedule a research appointment today by visiting the Hekman Library website, library.calvin.edu. Also, check out our YouTube channel anytime to see our essential tech tip videos and learn more research basics with Hekman Research 101.